Good day, all, and welcome to another edition of Local Legislator Live at 11. I am your host, Charles Gates. We are a component of locallegislator.net, where our mission is to be the premier source of local election information in the United States and an advocate for the sustainability of local businesses nationwide. We are honored to have no other than the Suffolk City Council member himself, Mr. Mike Duman. Good morning, Mike Duman. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, sir. Good morning, Charles. Appreciate the opportunity.
Sure, no problem. Let's get right into this because we have a lot of information we want to share with our listeners out there that may be on their minds. Now, Mike, what led you to run for an elected office and how long have you held your seat?
Well, I have been, I'm currently in my third term, halfway through my third term on City Council, which puts me right at 10 years. So I have served for 10 years on Suffolk City Council representing the Suffolk Borough. I guess my reason for serving is just that. When Sundays, I got in the habit of watching the news, meet the press, face the nation, local news, started actually paying attention to not only national affairs, but local government as well. Prior to that, I was kind of one of those guys that been in business for quite some time, and my attitude was I was going to come to work, do my job, keep my people happy, pay my taxes, and go about my business. And after watching a lot of the current news and getting somewhat involved, I thought to myself, I think we can do better. You have really just a few people making decisions that affect thousands and hundreds of thousands of people. And I started to think, the community has been very good to me and supported me over 40 years plus. So what better way to give back than to try to make a difference and have an impact on those same individuals' lives?
That is commendable indeed. Now, what does the city, where does the city get its legal authority from, and what is it empowered to do?
Okay, the city of Suffolk as it exists today is a result of a merger which was done in 1974 with Nansemond County. Nansemond County and the core city of Suffolk, if you will, merged together, became their own political entity. And as such, they're recognized by the Commonwealth of Virginia by charter of the General Assembly. So the power of the cities is bestowed upon them, if you will, from the General Assembly.
Okay. Now, Suffolk is divided into boroughs. Now, how does that affect the way the city is governed as opposed to, say, a neighboring city such as Chesapeake, which is at large city council members?
Well, the boroughs, I guess there's arguments for both. Personally, I like the borough system. It's you basically taking your city and dividing it in equal parts, and that is done every 10 years through the census. Each borough is represented or contains about the same number of individuals. After the census, lots of times the lines will be moved because each borough, you've got about a 5% leeway to go from one to the other. So in our city, we have 7 boroughs. We had, roughly 90,000 people. So there's about 13,000 people, give or take, in each borough. The borough, by being individually elected in that borough, it gives your citizens, your constituents within that borough, one specific individual to speak to in regards to local issues they may have. I think it makes it a little more personal that way rather than an at-large system where everyone is, everybody competes for the seats. If there's 8 seats, whoever gets the most votes, 1, 2, 3, 4, through the process. So I think it's a better way of doing business, if you will. The way the election is done, your seat is for 4 years. And so every 2 years, half of those council seats will come up for re-election. So there's never a total turnover. You can't have a total turnover, maybe half. Now, one thing that's a little unusual, which I would like to change if it's all possible. We had 7 boroughs up until 2 elections ago. We had 7 boroughs And out of those 7 boroughs, the mayor was basically appointed. Everybody got together and decided who was going to be mayor. So if the consensus was, let's let Charles be mayor for a couple of years, he got to be mayor for a couple of years. Well,
I'll
2
take it.
elections ago, yeah, I mean, I would. 2 elections ago, we went to an elected mayor. So we didn't change the number of individuals. We didn't change the number of boroughs. So now we have 7 council members and 1 mayor. So now we have 8 voting members, if you will, sitting on the dates, which makes it, it doesn't sound like much, but to get a majority, it's a lot easier to get 5 out of 9 than it is 5 out of 8. And that's the way we're set up right now. We have an elected mayor and there's 7 boroughs.
Mm. Now, what is the city budget process and what are the factors considered when reaching those final numbers?
Okay, well, the budget process normally starts, I guess for the city manager, it starts right at the first of the year. The city's on a fiscal year, which runs from July 1st through June 31st of the following year. Normally, the budget is presented to city council in March of the year it needs to be approved. When it comes to city council, what we are looking at is really a completed version, a total version of the city budget based on the city manager's proposal. It is the city manager's proposal to city council. This is the budget, and it's detailed. It's a full budget showing all the revenue, all the expenditures, where that revenue is going to come from, where the expenditures are going. You've got fixed revenue, you get variable revenue, fixed revenue being your real estate tax, which is never going to change. You have X number of dollars worth of taxable property times, our tax rate of 111, that's going to be a fixed number. And then you have the variable revenue, which is based on meals tax, sales tax, lodging tax, fees that you collect. So those are estimated within the budget. Once it's presented to us, then we have the opportunity to weigh in with our opinion, and we've got the latitude to change the numbers around. And then hopefully we will vote on it. If you cannot get a consensus, an approval from city council on the budget, then by code at the end of June, then the city manager's proposal will become the budget. And in a nutshell, that's how the process works.
Okay. Now, the state passes laws and city passes ordinances. When a city does pass an ordinance, who establishes the punishment for non-compliant? And is jail time an option for insubordination? Is that something that the city council is responsible for?
Well, the only laws, if you will, ordinances that we can pass are granted to us from the state. There's such a thing called a Dillon rule. And I think there's a couple of Dillon rule states. I'm not sure who else is out there, but Virginia is definitely one. And the Dillon rule basically states that local government can only do what they're allowed to do and granted permission to do by the state legislature. There's certain things that are within our purview, as far as we can't make felonies out of what the state says is going to be a misdemeanor. Now, if it's a misdemeanor, then lots of times we have the latitude to determine whether it's a class 1, 2, 3, or 4 misdemeanor and establish the penalties within the guidelines that we are given. So if the guidelines from the state says that a class 4 misdemeanor can come up to a $2,500 fine, 6 months in jail, we can't exceed that, but we can reduce it. We can reduce the fine. We did that, or I actually was a proponent and brought forth a couple years ago to change what the penalty was for excessive noise. And it just happened to be, excessive noise in a car and a car radio, and an individual got cited for that. And looking back on how it was set up in our ordinances, it called for up to 6 months in jail time, and $1,000 fine. And we in turn changed the classification from a second degree misdemeanor. I always get them backwards, first top to bottom. And we changed it to a third. So because we thought like the penalty was way too strict for what it was. So we do have some latitude, but anything that we can do is granted by the state. And as far as one other thing, I think you mentioned insubordination. Was that part of this question? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Insubordination, and I did a little bit of checking up on it. Legally, there's no such thing. And within the legal code, there is nothing that provides for a penalty for being insubordinate. I guess within the military system, there is within the UCMJ, but as far as civilians law is concerned, there is no penalty for insubordination.
Okay. Now, to our listeners out there, if you like this interview, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, connect with us on Twitter and Facebook, and like our page. And also check us out on Instagram. And remember to leave us a comment telling us who or what you would like to hear from in the future. We will try our best to get those people and those issues addressed. Now, Mike, Suffolk has 2 cities to its east and 2 counties to its west. What is the relationship with the other municipalities when problems arise? For example, let's say a commercial property extends into both jurisdictions. How does the city council get involved with those type of situations, or do they?
Well, I assume that you are referring to emergency situations more than
Right.
anything else. We do have reciprocal agreements with every neighboring city that you're referring to. And what that reciprocal agreement states is that whichever city has the ability to respond before the other, then they will indeed go into the other city. So say, for example, I mean, we're bordering on Chesapeake, and Chesapeake has a fire station 5 miles from where the incident is, and Suffolk's fire station would be 10, then they would actually respond to it for us, and vice versa. We have it with Isle of Wight, Chesapeake, Portsmouth. So there's a very, very good working relationship with those other municipalities in the Hampton Roads, where the entity that can respond and provide service in the most expeditious manner will be the one to respond first.
Okay. Now, COVID obviously has affected all of us in somehow, some way. How has it affected the city and city's council's functionality? How are they able to cope, and what challenges have you faced, and what ways have you overcome those challenges in terms of doing things differently?
Well, as you mentioned, you know, COVID has affected everybody to some extent. I'm going to go back to March and April and May. And in essence, we did not have any live meetings, if we will. We were doing a meeting just like we were now. There were virtual meetings. The business of city affairs can't stop regardless of what's going on. And we have to make decisions. And by code, we have to take votes on certain issues. We actually approved our budget virtually through a vote, which is highly unusual because normally at budget time, you know, you get a public hearing, you get a lot of people, everybody wants, you know, they're looking for money for this or that or has a comment. We did offer an opportunity for individuals to respond by letter or email, and then the clerk actually read those comments during the public hearing period. Most of what we do, or a lot of the work the city council does requires a public hearing, or the ability for the citizens to come forward and voice their opinions before they are voted on. So we had to deal with that. We can't take that right away from the citizens. We had to create avenues for citizens to communicate their concerns and their opinions to us before we vote. And the city manager and his staff did a great job setting those up. We were able to get through about 3 months worth of, you know, virtual meetings, got the budget passed without, I don't think there was any huge concerns. Last month, I believe it was, we went back to actually having meetings in council chambers. It's still a little trying. We can't do electronic voting because the members are spread out to have the 6-foot distancing. Seating is limited within chambers, but fortunately we have a very nice new municipal center. So it still allows for about 20 individuals to be in chambers at the same time, and then individuals can also wait outside. outside of chambers and be called in. So it's worked. It's been a little bit of an inconvenience. The city itself is not reopened yet. They are handling what they can. We have a reception area, but the departments are still not open yet. But we've been able to respond to most of our citizens, and I haven't had just a few complaints in that regards.
Okay. Now, two more questions for you, Mr. Duman. First question is, what is the city council's relationship with the school board?
Okay, a lot of people are confused about city council's relationship with the school board. Each borough has their own school board member. So the setup is about the same, other than they don't have an eighth person because they don't have a mayor. One of their school board members is selected to be their chairman. And there's another school board member selected to be a vice chairman. So they have 7 versus 8. So I have my own counterpart, if you will, representing the Chuckatuck Borough. And I think it's important that city council has a relationship. Whoever the representative is on city council needs to have a relationship with that school board member, because they are representing the same people on a day-to-day basis. They are representing the same people. The school system receives over 1/3 of all the local tax revenue that's generated. I mean, it's a huge amount of money, and a lot of citizens don't pay very much attention to school board elections, but they are very, very, very important when you consider not only the dollars that are thrown at it, but how important it is for any locality to be known. I mean, people think about relocating. One of the first things they look at if you got kids in your school system, what kind of school system is it? If you feel like that particular school system cannot educate your children the way you would like for them to be educated, then you have a choice: either not move to the city or enroll your kid in a private school or do homeschooling. But private school is very expensive. In essence, you probably have to gross another 30 grand to put your kid in school for a year. And it's a huge effect on the economy. People don't pay enough attention to it. City council, as far as their relationship with the school board, we only, in the city of Suffolk, we only allocate funds. We do not dictate where those funds are spent. The school system is their own entity. They get lump sum financing from us. They present a budget, they do their budget before we do ours, and say we would like to have $62 million worth of local funds for our budget. And we get to look at it and see where it's, this is how they're spending their money. And it's kind of a catch-22 for us. We are supposed to kind of control the purse strings, but it's hard to control the purse strings when, we're talking about kids' education, and the case being presented is that we need the money for compensating our teachers equitably, being competitive. So it's kind of a conundrum sometimes when it comes to the schools and the budgeting process. Now, there is other way we can do it. The city of Norfolk, for example, does their own capital projects for them. The school system tells them what to do, and they build the school for them. In Suffolk, we give them the money, and they build the schools. You can also categorize funds. There is a way to change your charter to where you take those funds and you divide them up: certain amount for administration, a certain amount for instruction, a certain amount for support, and that sort of thing. But it's kind of a can of worms if you want to open that up and getting that involved in your budget process.
Now, last question for you, Mr. Duman. How can people get more information about you and the city council? And I heard you have a big announcement to make as well.
Well, I kind of made the announcement back in July, but I have put myself on the ballot to run for mayor this year. And I'm one of those off-cycle elections, if you will. I'm only halfway through my council term of 4 years. I'll be 2 years through it at the end of this year. And the way the charter reads is if I lose the mayoral race, then I'll have a lot of extra time on my hands, because you're going to step down from your council race also. So, I've just decided to do that. I think I can be more effective. I kind of use the analogy. It's a lot easier to set the course of the ship than it is to try to change the course of the ship once somebody sets it for you. So that's kind of my reasoning there. As far as getting a hold of council, we have a lot of ways to do that. As far as individuals call me all the time. I put my email out there. I use my personal email. I use my personal cell phone. I try to be, accessible all the time. I make it a point to contact people as soon as I get a moment to breathe. I contact them right away. Lots of times they're very surprised that I contact them right away. But they do like that. There's a cornucopia information on the city website, the city of Suffolk. You can go on there and you can review any of these documents that we've already passed. You look at the budget, you look at comprehensive plans, you look at capital improvement plans. You can look at all the current events that are going on. So there are so many different ways to contact us now. And most of if you're representing the citizens the way you should, there should not be lack of a way to attain information.
Transparency is the key to success.
Always. It's all about communication. You know that. And that's,
Oh,
most people know I'm in the car business. And in my conference room, I call them the big C's of how we do business. And the biggest C in the biggest, boldest print I could possibly use is communication. I have found over the years that, especially with government issues, 90% of the folks that I talk to, when they have an issue, once I explain to them how the process works, address what their concerns are, most of the time you get, oh, well, that's great. I didn't know that. I thought it worked some other way. My neighbor told me this. My friend told me this. I thought I saw on TV. I didn't realize that you didn't have anything to do with that. And it's just amazing. Communication, especially today where everything seems to be so polarized. I mean, we need to talk more and come together somewhere, inside the edges, if you will.
and you know what? That is exactly why we have decided to do this show, because people just don't know. They assume, but they don't know. And like you said, they go to their neighbors, they read the internet, and who knows what
Yeah,
type of information is going to be there for them to
correct.
form an opinion. But when they hear it from people like you who've been there, done that, and is doing the job in the trenches and know what's going, you may not know everything, but you're a resource for information for the person that's been there and doing it. So we commend you. And to our listeners out there, if you know any aspiring elected officials or incumbent officials right now, get in touch with us. We will allow them to come on here, get an interview, and share information. And again, like Mr. Duman was saying, inform people to let them know what they don't know. And that is so important because we don't particularly focus on federal or state because that information is out there so much. There's a lot of information out there, but from a local level, it is so difficult to get information. City council, school board, commissioner of the revenue, the constitutional officers, what do they do and how does it affect you? Whether or not you have children, the school board, and their decisions affect all of us. It just makes sense to not only know who the people are in these positions, who's running for the positions, but to know exactly what their responsibilities and what do they do on a daily basis. So if you have that information, please comment, tag us, put us in a post, connect with us on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, our YouTube channel. Make sure you go there because all our videos will be shown on our YouTube channel. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you want to hear and hear from, and we will do our best to get that to you. We do this every single day, and it is for your information. Tune in with us on Monday when we will have our guest will be not an elected position, not elected official, but a brand builder because we also want to look out for local businesses, not the Coca-Colas of the world. No disrespect to Coca-Cola, but everyone knows Coca-Cola. We want to feature the local small businesses that are in our communities. And Monday, we will have brand builder, author, and social activist Namita Johns as our guest on Monday morning at 11. Again, thank you, listeners, for being out there. Thank you, Mr. Duman, for being here. We so appreciate you sharing that information with us and taking the extra time to be with us today. And for our listeners out there, remember, we're not global, we're local. We're locallegislator.net. This is Local Legislator Live at 11. I'm your host, Charles Gates. We will see you soon. Take care.